if we want to order anything like laptop or any clothes or anything, we can sit at home and we can order. But unfortunately, these services are not accessible. If these services are made accessible, imagine how easy would be the life of people with disabilities. The life of people with disabilities would be very, very easy. Okay, they don't need to depend on others for any activities. Most of the activities can be done by them independently, without any hassle, without any reasons. Okay, so I think this is very not very new. Okay, but this is something new in developing countries like India. Most people do not know these compliances, these standards. Now I'll give you another example that academic services like colleges, universities, everything has been gone online. Like courses are now online, online admission, examination, transcript requests, online everything, like hostel booking, everything is online. Okay, but these services, I mean, if they are online, then it is better for people with disabilities because they can use it without any hassle. They can use their computer, mobile, and they can use these services. Okay, but when these services are made accessible for them, accessibility compliant for them, now it is not the thing that they cannot use. They are using these services, but they have lot of barriers, lot of challenges. Okay, so their challenges can be uh, you know um, uh, minimized a lot if we can make these services accessible. So all the organizations which are working for persons with disabilities like Bhumika Trust, okay, then any organization for that matter, any colleges, universities, okay, banks, then make my trip websites, kind of, the air ticket bookings, railway ticket bookings, okay, everything can be made available in with at their fingertips. And that's why creating compliances and adopting compliances, making aware, I mean, organizations, making aware them for accessibility compliances would be very beneficial for them. And this could be one of the novice thing, I think, if we can do. And this could be one of the new area where we can actually focus for welfare of people with disabilities. Usually the welfare of people with disabilities means providing them wheelchair, providing them white cane, providing them food, shelter. That has been changed now. Actually, there is a paradigm shift now. So I think we should adopt these compliances on this day of occasion of International Day for Persons with Disabilities. Let us make a resolution that we will spread awareness in people, society, government, corporate organizations everywhere about the accessibility compliances, its importance, and its the impact on people with disabilities. So with these words, I thank again for inviting me to discuss with you all and sharing my views. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your words. And we assure you that we'll surely keep by your words. And now we have our next speaker.
Sir, hello. Dhananjay, sir, am I audible to you?
Yes.
Sir, can you speak on some other topic, please? Highlight us if you can. Our next speaker isn't here yet. So if you can highlight on some other, you have a really great experience in this field working with visual disabilities and persons with visual disabilities. So can you
I will
please
share few
highlight us on
experiences.
any?
Yeah. So if
Yes,
you can
sir.
ask me some questions, that could be
Yes,
better.
we are open to questions. If any listener or anyone want to ask questions, you may please open to questions. Okay, nobody, I guess, wants to ask questions.
Okay.
Sir,
So
can
one
I
more
ask
new
you
thing.
some questions?
Yes, yes. Please ask. Please go
Yes.
ahead.
So, accessibility first, please let us know about what accessibility is, because many people don't even know the word accessibility.
Yes. So accessibility means making services usable for everybody. For example, suppose there is a building, or for example, there is a hotel. Okay. So if a person with visual impairment is going into the restaurant, then the restaurant will not be fully accessible for them. Means what? They cannot know where to sit, where there is a open space. Open space means the free tables. Okay, they cannot understand. Secondly, if they have been got the manual or what we can say, the uh, menu card, the menu card they cannot read. So this is another accessibility challenge. The third challenge would be food. Okay, the food would be another challenge. Sometimes what happens, the food. Okay, now I am a co-host.
Yeah, sir, you wanted to share some of your video or something like that, so that's why I just made you the co-host. So sorry for that delay. Yeah, so can you just share that PPT or something that you had it earlier? Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so this is actually a universal design approach. Universal design means I was talking about the hotel or restaurant accessibility. Okay, so this could be the problem. Suppose we wanted to book a table or book a hotel. So hotel services usually are not accessible. Means my screen reader software, you might be knowing, I use a screen reader software. Okay, so my screen reader software cannot read everything on the web. Okay, because the websites are not properly designed as per the standards. What happens? My website, whenever we go through the website or opens any website, so what happens? The website content my screen reader cannot recognize, cannot understand, and there is a problem for understanding the website content. Okay, and this is what the problem we have. Okay, sometimes the all the services are not keyboard accessible. We use keyboard only. Okay, so what happens? Only we have to actually use mouse only for auditing or for connect clicking somewhere or doing something. Okay, so these are the challenges. Actually, technologies are there, but the technologies are not disabled friendly. So that is what the accessibility problem. Okay, so I am giving you the examples of a restaurant. Okay, then hotels. Okay, so what happens if we can provide electronic, what we can say, menu card? Then we people can read that. Okay, or a braille menu card. We people can read that. Okay, and also the food is not accessible. Sometimes we have to use fork and spoons to eat something. Like I will give you an example of accessible food and inaccessible food. So masala dosa, we cannot eat masala dosa with the help of fork and spoon. Okay, but if we can have a cut dosa, okay, so if we can cut that dosa into pieces, so we can easily hold the pieces and eat those pieces very easily. Okay, so this way accessible and inaccessible food can be done. Okay, secondly, there could be another examples of accessibility. For example, if there is a wheelchair user, so wheelchair user cannot pass through all the hotels. Many hotels are there in the crowded places. So wheelchair user cannot go there. Okay, and if wheelchair passes into the hotel, then there is very less space between tables, and the wheelchair user cannot move their chair in between the tables. Okay, and there could be problem if the wheelchair user has come into the hotel. Okay, first of all, the user cannot move in the restaurant part. Suppose user want to stay in the hotel, then the lift is so small in which the wheelchair cannot pass or wheelchair cannot go. Okay, the uh, toilets and all other services are not accessible for wheelchair users. So this is what the accessibility problem is. And now I will tell you another example. Suppose I wanted to go through using, suppose, DTDC bus. Okay, sorry. Local, you know, uh, uh, what we can say, buses. Okay. So bus do not stop directly at the stop. Sometimes it stops far away or far early. Okay. Wheelchair user cannot move their wheelchair into the bus. But now some low floor buses were introduced, and those low floor buses, directly stops at the platform, and the wheelchair user can move their wheelchair into the bus. Okay, so that kind of accessibility is required. Okay, so this is what we require for accessibility compliance. In that case, the other people do not need to accommodate with us. For example, if I wanted to do some work in the bank, okay, if the bank applications are accessible, I can do it with the help of my mobile phone. Okay, but if it is not accessible, then I have to ask somebody else, will you come with me in the bank? And then I have to take their time. Okay, I have to fill up the form and all the banking things with the help of the guy who is accompanying with me. Okay, and that would be a big problem and dependency again. Okay, so this dependency can be removed if we can have accessibility compliance services, digital services. Okay, so this is what I wanted to convey. So this is a very technical topic, digital accessibility or accessible computing. So some other time I will spend time on digital accessibility, and we can have more presentations on that. Okay, and I will also share how people with different kind of abilities use computational services. In the interest of time, I may not be able to share because I have to jump into some other meetings. So yes, if you have any more questions, you can ask, and then probably I may leave.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your time and sharing your valuable knowledge with all of us.
Now we have our next speaker waiting for us. Now I would like to welcome her. She is Miss Kanchan Pamnani, whose journey is full of grit and determination. An alumnus of Sindham College and Government Law College, she followed the footsteps of her father to become an advocate and practices mainly in the field of corporate, testamentary, property, and disability law. Her clients include Indian multinationals, private and public trusts, high net worth individuals, and even NGOs working in the field of disability, among many more. Apart from her career, she is committed to many social causes. She initiated and drafted the representation on the behalf of visually challenged to National Securities Depository Limited and the Indians Bank Association, which has resulted in guidelines that have benefited thousands of disabled people. We are honored to have you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, I've got my video started. I think I'm I think I'm now audible. Thank you for inviting me. It's really a great occasion. I am very impressed with your lineup of speakers and the participants who have really had a dose for 3 days of disability. What I'd like to talk about right now, and I'm going to do very short ones. I'm not going to bore you guys, and I'm going to just take it easy. I'm not going into the law because everybody's covered it. I'm looking at what is ahead of us. There's a lot ahead of us in terms of the law is perfect in its own way. If we don't implement it, it'll be imperfect. And if we do not implement it properly, we're really in trouble. So I'd like to just point out a few issues here. And I'm taking the line from inclusion and exclusion. We want to be included. We should be included. We have been included. However, there are issues that are going to come up that we need to be very alert about. And the next year is going to be a very important year if it is not a corona year. If it's a corona year, it's going to be important for other reasons, but otherwise we have issues. Elections. very, very important for us. We need to exercise our franchise. And that's how, yes, we don't have a lobby, we do not have a reservation. However, we still have a vote and we need to vote. What's going to happen here is exclusion. Yes, there are laws, accessible elections are there. However, we're going to be put with rules saying that elections from home, please vote at home. So instead of making a booth accessible, they're going to say sit at home and do it. This is good for us and bad for us. For those who really, really, it's very difficult to go even with all the inclusions. It's a great thing. They can at least exercise their franchise. However, for the rest of us who can reach a booth and vote, we're going to be told, don't complain. You could have sat at home and done it. So there's going to be a lot of inclusion and exclusion. Just think about it and keep it in mind. When we fight for accessibility, we also sometimes fight for inclusion. We're thrown out of the system. So we need to look at it and we need to fight this system. The same thing goes for work from home. Work from home, work from home. Oh, it was such a lovely concept before Corona happened. After Corona happened, a lot of issues got sorted out. We were able to work from home. A lot of things could be done. However, the disabled community is going to get left out. They're going to say, oh, you can't come to the meeting. You can't come to the office because there are steps. Instead of thinking of putting a ramp, they're going to say, आप घर पे बैठिए ना, work from home तो है, आपको allowed है, आप घर पे बैठ के कर सकते हैं. Yes. Are we going to be then included at the parties? No. The office parties will happen without us. The work can go on from wherever. They will insist that we work, but will they insist that we attend the office party? That's something we have to look at. People who had got used to, learning how to ask a disabled person whether ye khana hai ya wo khana hai ya aap yahan baithenge wahan. Ab they're going to say, "Arey, ab to ghar pe hai," So you will feel left out somewhere or the other. That is going to be exclusion. A lot of rules before they became rules were easy to implement because there was no law, no written down philosophy on it. Now, with the change that's coming up, we're going to have to fight backwards. And it's surprising, but we have to go backwards. Census, the person used to come home, पूछते थे, आपके घर में कोई विकलांग है? अब you can do it on an app. Is that app going to be accessible, or Dhananjay is going to break his head wondering about that? It's going to be very, very difficult for us to fight every battle. And what about college? College is going to be the same. Now it's hybrid system. Ab ghar pe baith ke padhiye, no problem. That's also not the only issue. But what about inclusion in other events? Medical colleges. First, we could get our way by just saying that, okay, we had to go to court, we had to fight our way, but we could explain to the court that there was a possibility of us doing something. Today, unfortunately, with the going to court, now there are strict rules. And unfortunately, the rules are not in our favor. They are going to be excluding. So there are issues that will come up. And I'm just pointing them out at the end of the 3 days. It's a great time. It's a bad time. And we need to think. Women with disability. Yes. Lots of things have improved for us. Many things have not. POSH is going to be one of them. That is going to be a good point and a bad point. When we are in the sector and we are learning every day how things evolve, we have to be very mindful of what is happening. Years ago, I realized this problem. Union Bank of India, one of the better banks, had an accessible website, etc. They modified it. And the minute they modified it, they upgraded it, etc. I got thrown out of the system. Of course, I complained about it. Of course, the bank redid it, but it isn't as good as it used to be. You all realize this for the income tax website. That's a problem. So every change for the better for the world is a change not necessary for the better for us. The CCPD, it's getting more streamlined, etc. You just can't complain. You have to do it in a format, etc. Okay, we do it. I file a complaint in the CCPD against a particular company or service. they take my case and say, oh, it's not it's not a union thing. It is a state thing. Go to Maharashtra. Go file it in Maharashtra. So again, I have to start the process. So things have been easy and getting better as we are learning over time. And lots of things have to get sorted out and lots more will be created. So I will leave you only with this thought that we are evolving. We need to evolve, but we also need to look backwards behind our shoulders and see how did the people before us manage? And how are we going to manage in the future for the next generation? You and me, we have to look at what we're not going to be able to do next year. It's very sad, but we will have to tackle that. Just to tell you that there was a time in 2010, Person with Disability Act was listed as an assignment for the judge. And normally the Chief Justice took it up. Today, the Bombay High Court doesn't even consider it in the list of assignments. It is now any other writ. So we are getting excluded in some ways. And let us not feel bad about it because we are evolving, we are moving ahead. We need to start getting back into the system and fight for every little bit. But be very alert. Activism is a matter of being alert and spreading the message. So each of you out there, we need to go ahead and look at what we're going to deal with in the future. I leave you with that thought. Just think about the next year and how we're going to take leadership ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience with us. And I'm sure our attendees had your talk in a very positive way. And it was a sort of food for thought for all of us as to what all steps we can bring into include people. And with this, I would encourage our attendees to ask any questions if they have, and we can get it sorted. Any questions?
Yes, sir. So first of all, I would like to ask about sir was telling that we need to make bus accessible for a person with disabilities. So what comes to my mind after listening that was what about trains? I mean, we see there are a lot of steps in trains, people who can't walk. I mean, how will they manage to do so? I hope I'm
Yes,
not
yes,
vague.
yes, Miss
Sorry.
Jaya, we could hear you, and
Yeah.
it was a very relevant question. But I think Dhananjay sir has left the meeting because of
I'll answer
prior
this.
commitment.
Jayant, I'll answer this one. Okay. Ma'am, I'll just answer it since I'm here. I might as well answer it. Yes, you're right. Trains and platforms, etc., have to be made accessible, and there is a process going on. I can't say that we do it very quickly in this country, but we're doing it. So there are some stations. I think Mysore station has been made. Bombay, couple of the stations in have been made accessible, and the trains to get onto the train, they are working on a design where you will be able to there will be a ramp that comes out of the train, and your wheelchair etc will go up. Okay, so there are design changes. These trains are very very old. They were done in the British Samana. There's a process. Unfortunately, the process is very very long. Even the low floor buses, there is an article in today's paper about low floor buses that they're no takers. We had got this sorted out about 15 years ago. The courts had given an order for low floor buses in Bombay, but every time you had to go to court again, Chennai had to go to court to get the same orders. So the thing is that even the roads leading to the station, and how will you get into the station, because that also is a problem. And
Yes.
so it is getting there. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's going to take a long time. So I'm saying there are things moving ahead and the things not moving ahead. They go and put escalators, which is so difficult. So you might have steps, or you might have had a ramp in the old, there are some stations, and I know Pune station has a ramp going up. Though it's a long ramp, but there is a ramp and there is a side rail to it. But now they're putting escalators everywhere. So how are you going to go on the escalator? Those are the problems. So that's why I'm telling you that one step forward, two steps backwards, two steps forward, one step backwards. We're going. That's the exclusion part of it. Is there any other question I can answer?
Ma'am, there are certain areas. I have a locomotor disability, but it is not completely defined. Yeah, there are many disabilities which do not have medications and all. So I don't have a proof. Sometimes I'm able to do activities, but I'm denied on the name of disability. So how can we motivate our inclusion?
Jaya, you will have to, can we chat on this? I'm happy to take your call in the night. Will you call me like next week, anytime in the night? And I'm happy to chat with you in detail. But
Okay.
otherwise, yeah, just give her, Jaya, give her my number. But Jaya, please in the night, after 9:30.
Yeah,
Okay?
and anytime you say, ma'am.
Anytime. Or on Saturday, Sunday, that's fine. Okay?
Okay.
I'll be happy to chat with you on this.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome, Jaya.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering our questions. We next have Ms. Nithi Goyal. Ms. Nithi Goyal, India's first female disabled stand-up comedian who uses humor to challenge prevailing notions about disability and gender, is a feminist activist from India working on disability rights and gender justice. She is strongly committed to changing the lives of persons with disabilities, particularly women and girls. In the decade of her activism, Ms. Nithi has worked with a range of national and global women's rights, disability rights, and human rights organizations. Her appointment to the UN Women Executive Director's Civil Society Advisory Group, her invitation to the multi-stakeholder steering committee of the Generation Equality Forum speaks for itself. She also sits on the advisory board of Voice and has been globally elected to the board of Association for Women's Rights and Development, where she is currently the president. In India, Nidhi Ram has been invited to become a member of the core group on persons with disabilities and elderly persons by the National Human Rights Commission and has been invited to the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force by the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you for the introduction and the kind words. We really just thinking about disability and contemporary issues. So when Jayant and I were chatting, I was told that we need to talk about contemporary issues and what could be contemporary issues in disability. For a lot of the world, and it's really a privilege to speak after Kanchan and to hear her speak as well. So hi, Kanchan. When we think about contemporary issues, for a lot of people, a lot of the non-disabled world, disability in of itself is a contemporary issue. The exposure to disability rights, the exposure to disability issues as mainstream issues is already very limited. 15% of the population lives with a disability, yes. But what happens to the other 85% of the population? Are they aware that we exist? I'm going to talk here about invisibility of people with disabilities who stand at multiple intersections. When we think of contemporary issues, when we think of emerging issues, when we think of what are we not speaking about enough? Who's not visible enough? What are the conversations that are not happening enough? For me, that comes to disability and gender. Disability and gender at an intersection, disability and gender as issues, disability and gender as identity. Now, it's very interesting because when you start talking about disability and gender, a lot of people say, okay, so you're not talking about access. So it's not, your conversation's not about education. Your conversation's not about employment. So what are these gender, like women-like conversations? Like what would these disability conversations look like? And if it's a disability and gender conversation, isn't it just a women conversation? There are many such questions that stay with us, that arise, that excite us, that intrigue us, and that make us really curious. Because somewhere, as disabled people, as disability rights movement, we have only now, or since the last decade, or even just the last couple of years, not even decades, right? we have started now thinking about what this intersection looks like. Of course, there are many seniors in the movement, many women with disabilities who try to bring focus, who have been working for years to talk about all of these intersections. But we somehow still say that these are issues that don't really concern us. How often have you seen a panel where you're talking about disability and technology, and the Disability Technology Conference is including a gender lens into it? How many times have we seen that employment and disability has a gender lens included in it? Very few, very seldom, right? It's particularly because of this fact that somehow when we talk about two movements coming together, somehow when we talk about two identities coming together, these identities slip between the cracks. So if I had to specifically zoom into women with disabilities, somehow they slip between these cracks of the women's movement and the disability rights movement. So much so that, in the COVID crisis, when we went to the ministry with the Rising Flame report, neglected and forgotten, and we said, here are recommendations to make response inclusive and gender sensitive and take note of, the areas and the issues and the struggles that women with disabilities are facing. The Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities said, but this is not our concern. These are women's issues. You have to go to the Ministry of Women and Child Development. I'm saying this today, and I said this 10 years ago when I started my work in the development space, that this crack is real. This gap where women with disabilities slip into, their rights or their issues slip into, are real. Yet they stand in this space where they are still considered as new emerging issues, as issues that we haven't engaged with enough, as issues that need attention, and we may find that time if education, if employment, if access is done. Let me take you through when we generally say gender, people either think it's either about sexuality, sexual minorities, queer identity, or then they're talking about violence. And that's why gender is important. No, gender is important throughout. Gender is important in our everyday inclusions. When we say as disabled people, nothing about us without us, the same applies to groups within our groups as well. So if there are women with disabilities, they need to lead. They need to be representatives. They need to be decision makers. It cannot be that decisions are taken for them. If they are queer people with disabilities, they again need to lead. They need to be visible. They need to have a voice. They need to speak up. We cannot say we work for them, and we cannot have the same charity approach that the non-disabled world has towards people with disabilities. It's very, yes, I'm really sorry about the background noise. Just give me a yeah, we try to minimize the noise here. So leadership and participation is directly linked to gender. Why is it directly linked to the gender, and why is it an issue of multiple movements? Why disability rights has to now think of extending and collaborating and working with other movements? We've heard women entrepreneurs, women in leadership, women in the boardrooms. We've heard of all of these initiatives. Is the disability movement advocating with them enough to say, okay, women in leadership, women in the boardrooms, women in corporate spaces, women as entrepreneurs, but are women with disabilities included in these initiatives? Are women with disabilities considered to be women enough? So there goes the whole area of leadership and participation. Why are we not seen there? Why are we not included? Why is the movement not as restless as it would be if our political participation rights were denied, if access was denied, if right to education was denied? Is because somewhere we all hold these images of women with disabilities. Who's a leader for us? Who is a leader? Do we see gender and leadership together? Do we see disability and leadership together? Do we see access to opportunities and gender together? Last year, we published a report, Neglected and Forgotten, which was on the impact of COVID crisis on women with disabilities in the country. And you will be amazed, or maybe not so amazed, to see that in the education chapter, our findings said that if there were families that had no technology, they would somehow try to manage and organize technology for their disabled male child. If there was one piece of technology to access online education, and there was a disabled and non-disabled child, the non-disabled child got priority. And if there was one device and there were two disabled children, one boy, one girl, the boy got priority and the girl was asked to do household work. How then can gender not be a question within our education system? When we're talking about accessibility and accessible toilets, are we not able to link menstrual health management with that? Are we not able to see how prohibitive it can be for girls and women with disabilities to access education, to go to offices, to access any kind of infrastructure and social spaces if they do not have accessible toilets? They are prohibitive. And so each issue around access, each issue of education, each issue of employment has a gender angle to it. Women have been fighting for eons to say equal opportunity, equal work opportunities. There is a whole labor laws around it, international labor organizations, labor civil society organizations, which talk about how men and women have unequal pay, unequal access to opportunities, also going backwards, unequal access or possibilities or investments in higher education. But what happens to this unequal pay? How many of us have explored this intersection? Very few. When the when workplace issues came up and access to opportunities come up, we only think about, and which is extremely important, to think about employability, sensitizing employers, building infrastructurally inclusive workplaces. But what we need to do is to build and go beyond the definition of disability when we talk about inclusive workplaces and say we want to build a gender disability inclusive workspace. And only then we will be able to include all folks with disabilities in that space. The POSH Act, the act that gives protection around sexual harassment at workplace, was passed. And women with disabilities kept thinking and looking and experiencing sexual harassment at workplace and finding very few opportunities to report, very few discussions around it, very few opportunities to report about it, very few exit opportunities, and very few risk-taking behaviors or ability to report because the job has come out of after many rejections. When we don't think about gender sensitivity in some of our advocacy equally as passionately as we think about disability sensitivity, what we're doing to our women with disabilities is perhaps making them more vulnerable, giving them a secondary space within our own movements or even within other movements, making them more invisible, and also somewhere perpetuating the question of whether women with disabilities are women enough. Because of this, we also are in many ways unable to move to other communities, to challenge our own power structures. So we always say, why don't we challenge ableism? Ableism impacts us. But it's time that we challenge sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and many other casteism, and many other power structures. Because many a times, and we were working on this report, the Human Rights Watch report that I've co-authored on access to justice for women with disabilities, and we were presenting that in a forum, and we were talking about all the barriers that disabled women face because they are women and they live with a disability. And one of the Dalit rights activists stood up and said, at least your women can reach the courts. Women with disabilities who are Dalits cannot reach the court, not because the courtroom is inaccessible. Even if you make the courtroom accessible, in the rural area where we stay, the courts and the government buildings are in the caste privileged areas where us Dalits aren't allowed. And it's really a point for us. We consider it as an emerging issue or an urgent issue. It's really high time that we consider these issues and we work on intersectionality with equal passion and commitment while we are working through our rights, while we're evaluating our laws, while we're thinking of who will this impact and how important each individual in the community is for us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, ma'am, to take out time from your very busy schedule and sharing your thoughts with us. And I would now request our next person. He's Mr. Suyash, who's an assistant professor at Department of Computer Science at Hansraj College, for extending the vote of thanks. And with this, we will come to a formal end to this 3-day conference. So I
Before
welcome.
we do the vote of thanks, let's open the floor for the audience to answer the questions first, right?
Okay, I'm sorry. Is there any questions for the audience? Any questions for ma'am?
Yes, if you allow, please. I want to ask
Yes,
something.
please.
Rather than asking, I have an observation.
Yes, sir.
Yes. First of all, Ma'am Goel, it was really nice hearing you. It was quite illuminating. But there is one observation which I really want to suggest also
Sure.
to implement that. Introducing disability studies as such in education system, sensitive.
We lost you.
I'm sorry, I'm talking.
Yeah, I heard introducing disability studies in education system, and then we
Yes.
lost you. Yes.
Yes. I'm so sorry for that. Actually, see, if we can sensitize people, whom we can call non-disabled, if we can use that term,
Right.
towards what actually disability is, and
Absolutely.
to make them understand that there are not only two, there is binary between able and not, disabled, so sort of a binary, that illusionary boundary which has been created. We can make them sensitive towards this boundary, that able as such, if we look at this word, is an adjective, and then there are degrees of this adjective also, abler and ablest. That means, if somebody is able, then there will be abler person, then there will be ablest person, and this thing will keep on going, prolonging the things, which means that everybody is in a way better, or in a way a bit less, in some way or the other. But it doesn't make any difference in terms of opportunities which should be provided to them from the state, from the government, and from other sides. So if we can make people sensitive, and only this can be done through education. Like, obviously, this conference which we I also have attended, and it has given us various viewpoints which probably we would have missed earlier. But there is one thing which I really wish that which can be done at the national level, at least introduction of disability studies, or some chapter somewhere in the curriculum, so that at least people may come in terms with this topic, this concept. Because in my area, from where I come, Punjab, people, there are so many proverbs, so many things, so many sayings, phrases which are there, in which obviously the persons with disabilities are always demeaned.
Correct.
There is a lack which is presented. So this is what my suggestion is, if we can do some sort of things for this.
Absolutely. And there's a huge conversation. Thank you for bringing on board. There's a huge conversation of doing this intersectionally, right? So
Right.
what it means is introducing a subject or a master's or a course called disability studies, but also integrating this disability studies or understanding of disability within various professional courses. So for example, with medical groups, right, medical professionals, we have been talking about that, because when we want to talk about reproductive health of women with disabilities, how do you then teach doctors? You should rather teach them when they are becoming doctors, disability sensitivity, right? That's when a burn survivor comes to you. There is less of pity, less of this kind of reaction. When a blind or an acquired blindness person goes to an ophthalmologist, there is less of that angle of like, oh my God, you will somehow overcome this. To everybody, any kind of professional. I can talk about mental health professionals. We can talk about women's studies courses, gender studies courses, and many other courses, architectural courses. So integrating disability studies or the concept of disability within academia is extremely important across courses. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit sir, for sharing that question. And I believe it was a very good idea shared by you. Now I request my attendees to, like, if they have any more questions for ma'am, they can
Shampa ma'am has some questions.
Shampa,
Yes, may I, sir?
okay,
Yes, thank you.
yes, please.
Actually, in this context, ma'am, I just want to ask you one thing. While we were talking about introducing disability studies in any institution, masters, any degree, etc. But what about our language? If we see our literature in anywhere, in everywhere, we'll find word like blind faith, like
Absolutely.
so these kind of, I'm giving one example. There are
No,
lots
no,
of
I
so
agree.
lame excuses, something like that. So, what to do with those things? Or do we need to just change the whole language system or something? Because
Right,
otherwise, it will be there, continuing or
right,
belittling persons with
right,
disability.
right. I have a three-part answer to this, and I'll quickly try and respond because I don't want to delay the vote of thanks. I think with language, the first thing we can do as individuals, as maybe people with disabilities or allies, right? Shampa, I haven't asked you if you have a disability, but as people with disabilities or allies, what we can do is first correct our own language. How many of us use very easily, oh my God, this is crazy? How many of us think that crazy is become like a demeaning identity for people living with psychosocial disabilities? So one is being self-aware, recognizing, and trying to correct. You may still slip up. Somebody may still slip up and then say, I'm really sorry. I reflected and I did this, right? But that's the way change will happen at the personal level. And you will be able to influence others through that. The second is shifting of public perceptions with many activists, academicians, everybody's working towards, right? Shifting till we don't shift the problem. What is the problem? So I call myself blind, right? I don't say visually impaired. I used to, at one point, I used to call myself visually impaired. I never called myself visually challenged or anything else, right? I said I was visually impaired, and now for many years, I just say I'm blind. And for people get very upset. They're like, why are you calling yourself blind? And I'm like, one, that's what it's called. So it just makes it very simple. Visually impaired means how much impaired, full impaired, less impaired, all that goes out of the window. And people just know I'm blind, right? So that's one. But what happens in the second place is why everybody's so upset is because we've made language as a source of derogation. How do we use blind to put someone down, to say, you're blind or what? You're deaf or what? You're crippled or what? So we have started attaching demeaning feelings and emotions, or we have attached forever. And that feeling and emotion has to change. If blindness was just called blindness without any abusive emotion to it or demeaning emotion to it, there would be no problem with the word, right? It's because it's become so loaded with emotion, it's the problem. And the third, yes, absolutely. Someone's left a message on the chat, and I agree with that. Inherent politics of language, like sexist language, right? Like item. She looks like an item. What is an item? That's direct objectification of a woman, right? So I think it will come through one, personal correction, two, really shifting public perception, and then three, working actively on language and politics of language and talking about it, writing about it more, and so on and so forth. I would still start from the self, because very often we want to change the world, but we somehow have, and I'm not saying all of you have, right? When I say we, and I deliberately say we, I don't have it to a large extent, but I still say we because we as a community may somehow have it. We were just launching a mental health manual this morning. I was at Rising Flames event, and we had the pleasure of having Bhumika Trust's team here as well. And we were talking about ableism and how disabled people have also internalized ableism because we are a part of the larger society. And we do internalize ableist language because we're a part of the larger society. We somehow forget in many spaces what this ableist language does to other disabled people, to other identities, and so on. Okay.
Any more questions from ma'am? I think they're done with your questions. And ma'am, like, I do appreciate that you give very easy to understand examples, and like we assure you that these change, however small they may be, but at some point of time they will become a public movement.
Absolutely.
And now I would like to invite our like Jayan sir to say a few words about this conference. After that, will be followed by the vote of thanks by Mr. Suya sir.
Thank you so much, everyone.
So thank you everyone for attending this conference, an international conference organized by the Bhumika Trust in collaboration with Hansraj College, University of Delhi, and the Gujarat National Law University, the Center for Disability Studies. It was a really great experience learning from the speakers that we invited from different fields. They came in, a lot of insights that we got off. We got to know new things. We learned a lot of new things. So thank you everyone. Thank you for all the speakers. Thank you for all the participants, all the attendees for coming here and making this conference a grand success. So that is all that I had to say, and thank you to everyone, each and everyone. If I've missed everyone, the interpreters team, the anchoring team, the volunteers team, everyone, thank you everyone for coming. So thank you everyone for making this event a grand success, the 3-day event. So thank you everyone once again. If I missed anyone, I'm sorry for that. So from now, I would request Suresh sir to take it over. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, Arun sir, you're audible.
Thank you so much, Bhumika Trust, for the giving me such a wonderful opportunity. On behalf of Hansraj College, definitely it was a great opportunity for us to be a part of your event. Okay. Thank you so
Sure.
much, Jayan sir. Okay. And Mary Sport as well. Okay, Mary Sport sir, thank you so much for your
Yeah,
all
I've
thanks.
already
And
thanked him. I've thanked the institutions as well. So both the
right.
institutions were great to have both the institutions, especially the interpreters that we got on the last time. So thank you, Rashmi
Yeah,
ji.
right.
Thank you,
Rashmi
Divya
and
ji.
Divya, thank you so much.
And now I would request Suresh sir to give the formal vote of thanks, and then we can finish it off.
Yeah, Sway sir.
Yeah. A very good evening to everyone gathered here. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks speech and acknowledge the contribution of those who worked really hard to make this event successful. So I, Suresh Kumar, on behalf of Hansraj College, extend a really hearty vote of thanks to our speakers, Mr. Dhananjay, Ms. Kanchan, and Ms. Nidhi Goyal, for sparing time from their busiest schedule to grace the occasion. Today we had an opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this will surely be going to encourage us in our future events. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. My gratitude to all the speakers for gracing the occasion and sharing their opinions today. So I immensely thankful to Bhumika Trust for their efforts towards organizing and anchoring of the session. I also extend thanks to all the members of their enormous corporate cooperation within the organization of this social event. A special mention to our respected principal, ma'am, Dr. Rama Sharma, for being the catalyst that stimulated us to do our best and standing as pillars of strength. With a deep sense of appreciation, we thank our loving principal for her guidance, and thank you once again to all of you for this wonderful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the attendees to come and just make this event a grand success. So thank you, everyone. Bye. Keep in touch with Bhumika Trust. I'm just entering the trust website on the chat box. If anyone wants to reach to us, they can visit our website and reach to us. Thank you, everyone.